What we're going to look at over the next half an hour or so is the reality of actually how you get major funding. Um, Now, I was talking with a client literally earlier this morning, the Southeast Asian Tobacco Control Alliance, and my contact there, Anissa, is saying, "I've just done a register. We've applied to 17 open funding calls in the last 3 years. We've not succeeded with a single one." On top of that, we've done several expressions of interest, letters of inquiries, and we've only got to a second stage on one occasion, and that didn't lead to a grant. So Anisha's looking at me and saying, "Well, how on earth do you get these big grants?" And what I hope to explain in the next half an hour or so is my understanding of how you get those big grants. So do the share now. Now this is this. I will make this presentation available to this slide deck is available with citizens, so we can share it with everybody. Right. Are people seeing a blank screen with just our logo on it,
No,
or are you seeing the
seeing
entrails?
nothing, nothing at the moment. I've not had a request to share either.
Right. Let's do it again.
Oh, here it's coming. It's coming.
Okay, we got something now.
We have got yours. We can see your presentations as opposed. Oh, there we go. Now we're cooking. Over to
Oh,
you, Bill.
a blank screen. Right, here we go. So this is me. I'll do a quick introduction on me for those of you who don't know me. We set up fundraising 25 years ago now, and really specialize in the art of grant seeking. And 75% of our clients are drawn from all over the world. And I think we do probably the largest range of online fundraising training in the world, with something like 70 online workshops each year. We train we like to think we train people who have to fundraise rather than fundraisers, because the vast majority of the people who take our courses or we work with are in organizations of under $1 million turnover, or even under 500,000. So very rarely are we dealing with professional fundraisers, but we are dealing constantly with people who have to fundraise. um I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Fundraising in the UK. And I say working with global civil society has really started since about 98, having started as a fundraiser in the UK in 84. Here's a kind of range of the people we work with. We work with several foundations, Oak Foundation, and then INGOs, large ones like Practical Action, and a medium-sized Computer Aid International, and then quite a lot of local organizations across the world, Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health in Kenya, and the Legal and Human Rights Center in Tanzania, which is one of the best funded human rights organizations in East Africa. And we've been working with them for 25 years now. And then the Siegel Family Foundation, US-based funder, who are the largest funders of our second largest funders of African civil society in the world. And then a funder, Porticus, someone you will know, again, we've worked with for over 20 years. And then my dear friends at the Southeast Asian Tobacco Control Alliance. Right. This is a bit embarrassing. This is me in 2002. So I've just started Fundraising Training Limited. I'm doing the circuit and I'm out there training. And and this is me the year before last. So you can see what happens in 22 years. Frightening. So this is me in 2002, and I did do a huge amount of stuff about the fundraising pyramid, about moving donors up on a pyramid. Now, this is about different types of giving, but we would use the same principle with respect to the potential to increase donor support. And I stumbled into this wonderful quote from Benjamin Franklin. It's worth having this in your office. One of the greatest tragedies in life is the murder of a beautiful theory by a gang of brutal facts. So what I decided to do is see if two little theories that we carry around in fundraising with deep affection. Number one, if you don't ask, you won't get. And number two, the idea that you can take donors on a journey and they will go up a pyramid. Let's see if they actually stand up to some data. So here's my data. And it's an ongoing study, and it consists at the moment of over 700 major funding partnerships. So I've got little micro case studies from over 100 organizations over a 10-year period, and they're drawn from all over the world, and all different types of funder. And basically, when I'm looking into this data set, I'm asking one core question. and that's who started the dance, the funder or the fund seeker. Very important question about the donor journey. Who started the dance? What we found is all 700 of these major partnerships we can put into deliberate capitalization 5 pathways. So what we're going to be covering over the next few minutes is my research-based opinion that there are 5 ways in which you get a major partnership. And if I get a new story, and if we have a chance for a discussion, we might find some new stories from around the room. So far, I managed to squeeze all of the new stories that I've encountered into these existing pathways. So pathway number 1 is out of the blue. So this is where the funder approaches you with no previous contact. You didn't appear to know them. You weren't aware that they were after you, and they initiate the funding relationship. I'm sure there are examples in the audience of this, and actually, what would be quite helpful is if you've got an example of a particular pathway, can you put it in the chat? Now, at the moment, because the way things are set up, I'm not able to track the chat. But as we get into the session, I might be able to look at some of the stories. So pathway number 1 is they find you. Obviously, that would be the better known charity you are, the more likely they are to find you. But the other particular thing we see, the more influencers, so you can be in a particular location or a particular sector, the more influencers who know you, the more funders find you through the influencers. So I would frame it in this way. I'd be thinking, if a funder was entering into my space, who would they refer to in order to find potential partners? Your job is to then do a conversion job on the referrals without specifically knowing who the funders are. So if we take the Trust for Indigenous Culture and Health in Kenya, who recently got $2.5 million from Mackenzie Scott, completely out of the blue. When we track that pathway, it came from recommendations from 2 significant influencers in their space, i.e. Siegel Family Foundation and Ford Foundation. So if you want to get funders to approach you out of the blue, be well known within your sector or locality, but in particular, make sure that the referral points know you well. So that's pathway 1. Pathway 2 is small becomes big. And this is where you have a pre-existing relationship with the funder. It's a low-level relationship, and you don't have any intention or expectation that it's going to be a high-value relationship. Then what tends to happen is the funder's circumstances change, and they approach you and start a dialogue about a higher amount of money. So small becomes big is predominantly initiated by the donor. And your pre-existing expectations are that they are a low-level supporter. They get the low-level supporter type of treatment and expectations, but it's a change in their finances or their circumstances that stimulate a new conversation. A lot of these, and a lot of my clients would talk about these coming from wind downs from trust. So if they're sunsetting or spending out, suddenly they're not giving you a grant from their revenue income, they're giving you a grant from the capital, and it's considerably larger. And again, most of these spend out grants are not ones which you can predict or anticipate. Where you can get some fundraising credit for this is you have maintained that relationship well enough that when they come into money or they change their policy area, you're front of the queue. So that's pathway 2, small becomes big. I'll just do a quick pause. I'm a little bit limited in who I can see at the moment, but any questions to this stage? Any points of clarification? We go on to the
no, I think they're deeply engrossed in your content, Phil.
I love the sound of deeply engrossed rather than
Their faces look very deeply
deeply getting coffee. Um, yeah, pathway two, small becomes big. Let's go to pathway three. Um, and we see a lot of this. Pathway three is peer introduction. So this is where one of your funders has introduced you to one of their friends. So you're in a funder network. So it might appear like a pathway one that they come completely out of the blue, but when you investigate it, it's become peer introduction. And that Mackenzie Scott example that I gave earlier is probably more a pathway three because it was Siegel family and Ford Foundation who both knew Tika that said to Mackenzie Scott's advisors, you need to talk to this organization. So peer introduction, particularly for smaller and emerging causes in strong funder ecosystems, is a very, very important pathway. It comes funder to funder, or it comes partner to partner. So this is from a peer organization. And in the current climate, I cannot underestimate the value of peer-to-peer introductions to funders. We would phrase it as this is like frenemy collaboration. And maybe this afternoon, one of the things that you might see the session with Rosaline and Patricia on local fundraising. Rosaline has got some fantastic examples of reaching funders through friends and frenemies. So peer introduction isn't just funder to funder; it can be very much about the peers you work with, and I think that's increasing as a source of pathway into a funder. So again, I'm going to pause a bit. Are we all kind of cool so far? Still deeply
Yeah,
engaged?
there was someone, I think particularly this pathway in a previous charity we received a grant from an unknown funder. Uh, After receiving a grant from a funder who recommended us to funder B, I think is what the yeah suggesting. So
Yeah, very
this
cool.
kind of scenario.
Really early emerging stages. It's interesting. One of my contacts used to be the East Africa director for the Ford Foundation, Mary Ann. And if you have conversations with Mary Ann about that funder community, she describes them as a bit like a book group. That what they do is they kind of pass around partners to each other. So it's one member of the book group says, "Hey, I've had a really good time with this partner. Maybe you want to enjoy it." A bit like saying, "I really enjoyed this book. Maybe you want to read it." And in that, you don't expect everyone to love the same book. Equally, you don't expect everyone to love the same partner. But what you're doing is saying, "I enjoyed it. I hope you're going to enjoy it." So you do have that think they are book groups,
There's
and
there was also a question around who's a frenemy. Somebody's kindly put friend slash enemy, a friendly rival, and then sort of in what context?
Um, yeah, a frenemy could be exactly a co-venturer, so that you do very similar things. You collaborate, but also you do compete for funding. So there's that kind of double level relationship. There's competition, but there's also a huge amount of collaboration. Um, and frenemies can be people that become frenemies quite quickly. Um, Interesting with Rosaline and a guy called Kevin. We saw that friendship during the Skull World Forum start, emerge, and grow to a point where Kevin was quite influential in Rosaline meeting a funder within a space of a few days. So it could be institutional frenemy, but it could also be a person. I hope that kind of helps to clarify that a bit.
So thank you.
Right, so we got three of them, and actually, all three of these tend to be initiated by the funder. There are things that you can do to stimulate this, but the actual timing initiation is often funder triggered. Pathway four is a complicated one. So, pathway four is how the donor learns of you through experience of your work. And we all have this. We are being watched all the time. In the field, we are being watched. In our home location, so in the UK, we are being watched. People are engaging with you. So, but they're not funders. And then something changes in their circumstances, the arrival of money, the switching of priorities, and that observation and learning about you turns into money. And that tends to be initiated by the funder because you're not entirely sure who's watching you. Although that might be ex-members of staff, it might be ex-partners, but you are being watched and engaged with, and that learning triggers financing when the other circumstances come into play. And there's two versions of this. They come to you, and then the second version is you take the show to them. So the second version is our classic networking, getting into spaces. So I'm going to give an example. We worked for many years with a disability rights organization in Uganda, legal advice for persons with disabilities. The director is giving a presentation at a human rights conference in Dublin. She's taking her work into an international stage. She's talking about the work. She's not specifically fundraising. So she's taking the show to them. She finishes her talk. She goes for coffee. Someone comes up to talk to her. And basically, you don't know me, but I'm the Africa director of a major foundation. Very interested in your talk. Let's have a conversation, which then initiates a journey towards a €100,000 grant. I would count this under Pathway 4 because Laura was not specifically speaking or intending to get a gift from that funder. But because she was taking the show into the environment, that's where that triggered the conversation. So this for me is a Pathway 4. And interestingly, it was the funder that initiated the conversation with her at the coffee table. So in that sense, it for me, because it's not intentional and specific, it's funder initiated. Again, are people cool with this one?
Yeah, there's been one question is how do you get known to funders as a brand new organization, which maybe could be part of your might be coming up.
Interesting. Can I get to Pathway 5 and then I'll do a pause and
Yeah.
I'll give me a few moments just to because that's a big, it's a big question with actually very, very many answers. But let's move on to Pathway 5. And Pathway 5 is the only one of the 5 which is uninvited by the funder, and you intentionally and specifically make the approach. So this has got two versions to it. Version 1 is you proactively engage them, you set them up as a target, you take them into a moves management process, and you hunt them, and it leads to an intentional and specific partnership. You instigated it. And then I would count you responding to an open funding call, like every other lemming, as initiated by you. So that's uninvited by them in the sense that they didn't invite you, they invited the world. So it's your intention to respond to that call. So this is really interesting, is that of the 5 pathways that I've seen, 4 of them are all initiated by the funder. And it's actually the funder that is, if you like, is setting the conversation and framing it, which opens up huge questions about if you don't ask, you don't get. Because what this study is actually saying is that's not true. Because in 4 and 5 pathways, it's more about you being fundable than you seeking the funding. So it's almost like you're inviting the gift rather than seeking the gift. I think it also opens up really interesting dilemmas about what is the role of a fundraiser, because broadly speaking, fundraisers do Pathway 5, and what is about the whole organization's engagement in fundraising. So I'm conscious of time. Am I correct? We've hit 11:05?
You have indeed, but you've still got kind of a 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So.
going to try and nibble 5 minutes off the comfort break. I won't take the whole comfort break. So if I give myself another 20 minutes,
Okay, thank you.
and this is so important, and we do so much of this with our organizations, and I'm sure someone like Rosaline later might vouch for this, is if you want a very effective high value fundraising strategy, you need to make sure that you open up every single one of these pathways. You need to be findable. So people need to find you out the blue. So be findable through the website, but primarily be findable by using billboards. So make sure you know the referral points in your location and your sector, and make sure all those referral points love you. Two, look after all the little ones, because you never know when that frog will become a prince. So, and do this in an efficient way so that when they come into the money or they ship things around, you're on their investigation list. Peer introduction, make sure that all of your funders think that well of you that they will introduce you to their friends, and also kind of know whether funders have friends or whether they're lone wolves. And please make sure that your frenemies, your co-collaborators, are also allies of yours and pathways into funders. Recognize that people are watching you. So the more that people engage with you, the more you're maximizing the chance of them learning about you and then converting that to money. And then make sure you're doing the maximum in terms of networking and going to those locations and going to those events. And then as we do keep up the specific intentional apply to every fund that is relevant for you, set up a hit list of people you want to approach, get hunting strategies. And this is it. So if you're only doing one or two of these pathways, you are not maximizing your potential. So I'm going to stop on this share and then hopefully give us a few, let's have a conversation for about 8 minutes. And then I quickly want to do some work on some recent research we've done into the landscape of UK foundations, what's happening financially.
There's
So
a couple of
other
other
things
questions.
in the
Yeah.
chat that I'll
Yeah.
try.
So we've got I'll give you kind of three questions that have come up. Really interesting, thank you. How is pathway 1 different to pathway 4? That's one of them. One is, how do small charities compete against the larger, better known charities?
Right, pathway,
Yeah,
which
go on.
is they send you completely out of the blue. When you analyze it, there's no specific referral pathway from someone who knows you, like a funder or a frenemy. And it's clearly they've been using other channels to find you, which could be doing online research, could be using referral points that you're not aware of, but or it's simply because you are well known. And it doesn't necessarily mean well known be Save the Children level well known, but well known within your locality and your sector. So whereas pathway 4, there is they know you, there's a pre-existing connection with you, or they have learnt about you from you taking your testimony into their space. So you're making presentations at conferences, you're going into environments. So there's a little bit more connection and intentionality in that.
Thank you. Then the next few questions are all around the same and around size, which is, how do small charities compete with larger? How do small charities win or attract donors? If there's a type of event what type of events could one attend to potentially meet the donors? I think it's this kind of tussle between not
I
giving the space to the larger organisations.
Well, I work with smalls all the time because the vast majority of our work is with African-led civil society. Uh and often smalls in quite fairly remote locations. So I'm working with the moment with an organization in Burundi, village micro clinics. There are very few funders in Burundi. Um, so Tarsise, who is a chief executive who's running that organization, he has to spend his life in different environments. So Tarsise within visa limits is getting out of his environment as much as possible in order to get into spaces where he's likely to find funders. So I think one of the crucial things is if you're not well known, you need to be in the spaces where people are going to find out about you. And there's one guy I'm going to give a shout out in here, and that's Sean, because I can see Sean's in the audience. I've known Sean for a while. My God, is that guy good at popping up in different spaces? Now, I don't know whether Sean can say he's had some immediate results from that, but I think the presence of the Uganda Schools Project from Sean's, commitment to get into different spaces is crucial for a very small organization. Rosaline, who you're going to meet this afternoon, and I'll put a I know Rosaline's in the audience, so this Rosaline's story, and again, Rosaline's from Western Kenya. She got her first major funder by going to a conference in Mexico, the Opportunity Collaboration, not from Western Kenya where she is. And how did she get to the conference, and how on earth did she get the resources for it? She sold her car, and then ends up in Mexico at a conference that she'd never been at before, and then has to work out how to navigate it. But it was at that conference that she met the Siegel Family Foundation, and that started the whole journey. So I got a little reply from Rosalie. I hope I've done you justice in that story, but I do think you've got to be out there in the environments where funders are likely to be as a small to build your reputation. The other thing as a small organization is going back to those billboards and those influencers. You don't know the funders who are likely to enter your space, but it's not difficult to work out the 20 referral points that they might talk to. And your job is to convert the referral points, and they will by proxy convert the potential funders. So for me, as a small organization, recognize that donors are unlikely to be on your doorstep. So you have to make a conscious effort to get out of the space and be where they are. And then the second one is don't do it alone. Use billboards and frenemies as your presenters. You won't do it on your own. I hope that addresses some of the questions.
I think it's a lot of the questions actually about kind of it having to be a intentional piece of work from which is again itself challenging as small stuff and resources are tight, but yeah, so I think there's some really good points there, and I think and there's a lot of comments here coming saying that kind of having similar experiences as well. So yeah,
We talked about top 10. It's interesting if you go to Siegel Family Foundation, they have actually listed the top, I think it's 20 events globally that people should attend. I think that's a resource you can find on their site. I think Kevin Brown at Mighty Ally has also posted this as well. There was a quick question just popped up. I might have missed it again. Just clarifying a billboard. A billboard is someone who's independent of you, but knows you well enough that they can convey your story to a third party. Some ways I work as a billboard with some of my clients. So I've got an interesting meeting with Oak Foundation next month. I am going to be a bit of a billboard for a few of my clients with Oak. They don't have the chance to get to Oak. I do, and there's a couple of clients that have done a good enough job on me that I can probably sit with them and say, well, where are you with this issue? So I'm a billboard for them. I'm not in their organization. I'm outside of the organization, but I'm comfortable with presenting them to a third party.
thank you. There's more coming, but I'm conscious that you've got kind of 10 more minutes and you've got some more good stuff to share. So
okay, shall we shift gear a bit? And now we're going to do something which again comes from a different recent piece of research I've done. So just let me get my act sorted out, and I can get my aha, got it. Right, I'm going to try and do this quickly, take us through to enable you guys to have a break in 10 minutes. So I'm guessing you're seeing the again a PowerPoint
Yeah, we're seeing it in a presentation, but not in your view as opposed to presentation mode yet. Oh, there we
presentation.
are. Now we're seeing it. Now we're seeing it. Lovely.
Right. Okay. We did this event about a month ago. We called it Coming of Age, and it was basically what's going on from UK foundations. And we had on the panel, we had myself, we had Leslie Alborough, who's an academic in the philanthropy space. We had Judith McNeil, who's current vice chair of Nationwide Foundation and was director of philanthropy at Comic Relief for 10 years, and then David Carrington, who's kind of one of the real veterans of grant making. And what we were doing was we were looking at what's been going on in foundations over the last 21 years. And I'm going to present my part of it, which is about the numbers and where it comes from. Like my 5 pathways come from studying 700 case studies. Everything I'm going to share with you comes from another data set. So we have a thing called the fish tank. It's 100 foundations. We created it in 2009 in order to analyze the impact of the financial crash. And we have these 100 foundations. We have details from their accounts going back from 2004 to 2025. So it's in all it's about 2024. So it's 21 years. So we got 16,550 pieces of data, and it's a diagonal slice of the UK foundation world. And to give you an idea of the scale, 624 million in grants in 24. So this is an interesting insight into what a longitudinal insight is, what is going on with UK foundations. We've looked at our findings and then we've compared it with some other pieces of research on wider data sets. And virtually everything I'm going to share with you that comes from this fish tank holds up when it comes in relation to other research and to other data sets. So, first of all, this is the range of funders here. So in 2024, it's interesting. In 2004, there were only 5 of them that were giving over 10 million. Now that's migrated up to 12 of them. So it's interesting. It's the same set of funders by and large. And what we're seeing is that group have grown significantly in terms of their philanthropy. So what does that grant making look like? So this is the growth patterns. So we've got them starting. So the brown line is the amount of grant making that's come out from this group. So what's happened is this fish tank are giving nearly 3 times as much money now as they were 21 years ago. So very interesting thing. A select group of funders have tripled their philanthropy in 21 years. The blue line here is RPI. So you can see that amount of grant making in 2005, if we just index linked it, would still be way behind that increase in grant making. So if people are saying to you, oh, there's less money around, it's not true. It's certainly not true with this data set. And I think we're fairly confident that if you take other data sets, the same applies. What I've given you there is a graph on terms of the amount of grant making. But interestingly, over the same period, you can see income is much more erratic. So this is fascinating. This is kind of fascinating for me because in the early parts of this study, there was some relationship between increased income going into foundations and increased philanthropy. But as you can see from the line of the previous graph and their income line, that is completely broken down. So here we got the two together. So the green line is the income going into trusts, and the grant line is the amount of money coming out in philanthropy from this same body. I think what you can see is, apart from our little blip around Brexit in 2016, income and grants had a they were intertwined, but that has completely broken down in since the pandemic. And I'm fascinated by this. It's completely broken down. So in many ways, in terms of the financing of philanthropy through trust, we're in absolutely uncharted waters. Um, what is interesting is asset growth and grant making. So the red line here is how much the total funds, so the capital assets, the investments, the properties that are generating the income. You can see how that line has grown, and obviously income is on not the same scale, and grant making is not on the same scale. So the brown line is grants, green line uh, in, is income. You can see there's a little bit more of a link with the grant line and the asset growth line. And I think what this is saying is more foundations are using their assets to fund grants than they were before the pandemic. And I think that is really significant, because if you're using the gains from share trading, or you're even selling off your assets, and what we can see from 2000 to 2022 to 24 is there has been no real significant asset growth. For the first time in 21 years, you've had 2 years of not substantial growth. So it looks like foundations are dipping into their assets in order to maintain philanthropy. And as you can see from this is only ever happened, and it only ever happened in 1 year before, and that was in 2008. So I think we're in really interesting new territory in terms of the financing of grants. But I think we've got to look underneath this a bit, because there's a really important point in here. And this is a really, really important point with trust fundraising. If you analyze these growth lines, what you find is the driver of the overall lines are always under 10% of the portfolio. So what the herd are doing and what the distorters are doing are completely different. And because the distorters, who are under 10% of the grant makers in our study, tend to be larger, if their philanthropic behavior is different, is positive, it will mask the negative philanthropic behavior of the herd. This is a very important point. I do hope I can get it across adequately. If you have got theoretically 100 funders in your portfolio, 100 foundations, the growth line in the philanthropy in those foundations may well be positive, like our data, but that will be driven by the behavior of probably no more than about 6 or 7 in any 1 year. 93 of your 100 are going to behave in pretty much like they've always behaved. So if you want to experience growth in your funding portfolio, know who are the distorters and the positive distorters and sit under their trees, and recognize that the herd behavior might be very different. Now, that's quite a tricky point, and I hope it's enough to get through, but it is kind of saying that your destiny is pretty much determined by the behavior of a small number in your portfolio, not the majority of the portfolio. And what it is trying to pick the ones who are likely to be the change makers. So what am I doing in this particular grant here? Yeah, the brown line is total grants, and the red line is the total grants of the distorters, that small number of changes. And you can see the brown line and the red line are absolutely identical. And I'll say in any given year, there's probably only about 5, 6, 7 distorters. If we look at the herd, the 93 and 97 other funders in the portfolio, look at their line. It's very different. It's kind of flat. And I think that's going to be the reality of the portfolios that you're sitting with, is there's going to be, in any data set, there's going to be change makers who are the distorters, and then there's going to be the herd. And if your relationships are with the herd, you are probably likely for a fairly stagnant destiny. If your relationships are with distorters, you have opportunities. But the distorters will always be a tiny percentage. I'm going to stop there because I realize that was literally a 10-minute run through a lot of complicated information. I'm happy to stick on for another 5 minutes or so for a few questions, but I'm also very happy if people want to take a comfort break. So probably that's the deal at this stage.
Thank you so much for that. It's been really insightful. And thank you for also responding to the questions. I think there's a few more that might have popped up, but there's been a lot of chat, which always happens with SIDCN. I love it that everybody kind of shares their experiences as well and responds to each other's questions. We are due a break now and due to come back at 11:30. So maybe if I say, if you want to quickly grab a break, please do, because I'm conscious it's hot, particularly I know for us in the UK at the moment, we're surprisingly hot. Those of us around the globe are probably thinking, what are you whinging about? Uh, and then if you did have some questions, and Bill, if you're happy to stay for this next 5 minutes, whilst those that don't want to have a break, then I'm happy to stay here and
So I'll hang around for about 10 more minutes, and then I'll
yeah,
pick those questions. I'll hang around and ask
yeah,
questions,
okay.
and then
Because
if people
yeah,
question that
okay.
they want to pose after having a bit of think over a coffee, I'll see if I can address those.
Um, So lots of thank yous, lots and lots of thank yous. Obviously, I'm really interested how can we identify distorters through their accounts?
Actually, I think the accounts are pretty useful. I mean, I've done obviously I'm a bit obsessed with this, and I have done a little bit of trying to, I know the distorters in our fish tank, and I've done quite a lot of analysis into the distorters and why they distort. And the biggest single factor as to why a distorter distorts, and we're talking about in a positive way in terms of giving more money, is they have access to more money. So a foundation that has pretty much the same sort of reliable forms of income is highly unlikely to be a distorter. The distorters are funds which have, say, a living settler, so there's funding coming into them, or they likely to merge with other foundations, or they get windfall monies because they may be connected to a company. But pretty much all of the distorters that we've seen have a reliable form of income, investment income, but then have occasional flows of additional money. And what's interesting is that obviously the accounts can tell you that, and there is a time lag between the arrival of the money and it converted into philanthropy. And quite often that time lag is 2 to 3 years. So you can pick up a set of accounts, see that there's been an injection of money for whatever reason, and you're not too late because it's probably going to be about 2 to 3 years before that money will convert into new philanthropy. Hope that.
Every day, literally every day is a school day. That's really really helpful.
I mean, adding to that a bit, I mean, like the to spot almost a surefire distorter, it will be a combination of financial change and personnel change, like a new generation of foundations or new staff coming in. Once you can see that and both are identifiable from the accounts, then the chances are that they're going to be a distorter are incredibly high.
Okay. There is one final one I want to just bring, which is, what do you look for to be comfortable to promote a charity? What do you look for when you're being a billboard, basically, Bill?
What, to me to be a billboard for someone?
Yes. When you said you said when you're meeting with, I don't know, Oak Foundation, who, when you are being a billboard, what makes you comfortable in being, what are you looking for?
Okay, this is my personal bit on it. I mean, I think this would be universal for nearly anybody who's going to be an introducer or a billboard. Is I've the two that I'm actively being billboards for, I know they won't let me down. So one of them I've worked with for 10 years, and I know them. They're not going to let me down. They really are a quality organization.
Yeah.
And for me in particular, I think both of them are dealing with issues that are underrepresented, in terms of the importance of their issue and the obvious funding landscapes there. It's unfair. So for me, I quite like a bit of injustice. I think both of them are dealing with issues that the funding environment is unjust.
Yeah.
But I think above all, yeah, I know them. They're reliable.
Yeah.
Also the other thing, oh, I'm a massive, and you're going to meet Rosalina later. I'm a massive introducer for Rosaline. And I think you're going to learn why. And that's big. Yeah, yeah. I've been converted to the mission, but and the other thing is really important, and this again, Rosaline has this in buckets, is I know that she takes responsibility for the funding destiny. Um, I'm very kind of reluctant that people use me as a kind of, I don't know, excuses them for not hunting themselves. Whereas I'm really happy to work with someone who's already a good hunter, enhance that rather than be this kind of external hired hunter.
Lovely. Thank you. I'm